7 years of winning together, 2 trips to the NBA Finals, 3 Eastern Conference Finals runs, and it took less than a month after a trade for all of that to end with a punch, thrown in front of a room full of kids. This is the story of how Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro went from Miami Heat brothers to a Las Vegas gym altercation that's got the entire league picking sides. Let's set the scene first, because the backstory matters more than the punch itself. Adebayo and Herro were teammates from 2019 through this summer, 7 full seasons. Both are Kentucky guys, drafted 2 years apart, Adebayo 14th overall in 2017, Herro 13th in 2019. Together they made the playoffs 6 times, reached 3 Eastern Conference Finals, and made 2 trips to the NBA Finals, in the bubble in 2020, and again in 2023. Herro won 6th Man of the Year in 2021, and made his first All-Star team in 2025, a season where he averaged nearly 24 points a game. Adebayo made 3 All-Star teams himself, earned All-Defensive First-Team honors, and back in March, he did something historic, dropping a franchise record 83 points against the Wizards, passing Kobe Bryant's famous 81-point game for second most in a single game in NBA history. For years, these two were the face of Miami's culture, the kind of partnership franchises build championship windows around. Then this summer, the Heat finally landed the superstar they'd been chasing for years. After striking out on names like Damian Lillard and Kevin Durant in past seasons, Pat Riley pulled off the biggest trade of the offseason, acquiring 2-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis from Milwaukee. To get it done, the Heat sent back Tyler Herro, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Kasparas Jakucionis, the 13th overall pick in the draft, unprotected first-round picks in 2031 and 2033, a 2030 pick swap, and a 2033 second-rounder. That's about as expensive as trades get. And buried inside that package, splitting up 2 Kentucky guys who'd spent 7 years building something together, was Herro. Here's where it gets messy, and where you have to ask whether this was ever really about basketball at all. In the days after the trade, Herro started posting from what's reportedly his second Instagram account. First came a graphic ranking the league's worst mid-range shooters. Giannis topped the list, shooting a rough 26.8% from that range. Adebayo landed at number 10 at 35.9%. On its own, that's just a stat post. Maybe a little petty, but nothing crazy. Except then the screenshots started circulating. Alleged private messages, attributed to Herro, going a lot further than shooting splits. In one of them, commenting on Adebayo's 3-year, $166 million extension, Herro reportedly wrote, "You should get paid $60 million to be a top-tier defender on some nights." That's not just a shot at Adebayo's game, that's a direct shot at his paycheck, from a guy who'd been sharing a locker room with him for 7 years. And here's the detail that makes it sting even more. According to reports at the time, Adebayo actually made $37.1 million in salary last season. Herro made $31 million. Not exactly a massive gap between the two of them, which raises the obvious question: if you're going to publicly question whether your own teammate deserves his money, when you're making almost the same amount yourself, what's actually driving that? Is this genuinely about basketball IQ and shot selection? Or is this about a guy who just got traded away from the team that built its whole plan around the guy he was throwing shade at? And that wasn't the only message attributed to Herro in that leaked exchange. In another comment, Herro allegedly questioned why Heat fans were so worried about what he does when he wasn't even the best player on the team. Maybe that's just a guy being defensive online, or maybe it's a real crack showing through, a franchise cornerstone suddenly reminded, publicly, that he wasn't irreplaceable once a superstar became available. Whatever the real motivation was, according to ESPN's Shams Charania, Adebayo was already irate about those comments well before the two of them crossed paths again. Fast forward to Friday morning. Both teams are in Las Vegas for Summer League, the Heat and Bucks scheduled to actually play each other that same afternoon. Adebayo and Herro cross paths at a gym inside the resort's World Casino. And according to The Athletic, this wasn't some quiet hallway run-in behind closed doors. It happened in front of an AAU team that Herro personally runs, kids who were there to work out, not witness a fight between 2 grown men who used to be teammates. Per multiple sources who were actually in the room, granted anonymity to describe what happened, Adebayo walked onto the court, and Herro said something to him. Whatever it was, it didn't sit well. Adebayo reportedly walked straight over to Herro and, without hesitation, punched him. Let that sink in. 7 years of teammates, 2 finals runs, 3 conference finals, and it ends with one guy swinging on the other in front of a group of children at a hotel gym in Las Vegas. The aftermath was just as chaotic as the punch itself. Herro's coach reportedly stepped in immediately to confront Adebayo. Herro, according to reports, started yelling at his former teammate while security personnel escorted Adebayo out of the building. Photos surfaced afterward showing Herro with a visible mark underneath his left eye, some reports describing it outright as a black eye. Both players ultimately left the scene on their own, and a Las Vegas police spokesperson confirmed no formal report was filed and no arrests were made. If you're new here, this is the kind of story we break down every week. The real reporting behind the headlines, no fluff. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let's get back into it. And here's the detail that makes this whole thing feel almost impossible to script. Just hours before any of this became public, Herro sat courtside at the Heat-Bucks Summer League game and did a live interview on NBA on Prime. Talking about his former team, his former coaches, his former teammates, Herro said, on camera, "It's all love in Miami." He talked about seeing Heat staff, seeing the coaching guys, saying everyone was good. That interview happened before the story broke, which means somewhere between saying it's all love on a live broadcast and walking into that gym, something clearly wasn't love at all. When reporters actually caught up with Herro afterward and asked about the altercation directly, his response was about as short as it gets. "My only comment is no comment." Both the Heat and the Bucks were also asked. The Heat put out a statement reading, "We are aware and not commenting." The Bucks also had no comment. Even Bucks head coach Taylor Jenkins was put on the spot about it during a radio interview and gave almost the exact same answer, saying, "I don't really know all the specifics," before declining to say anything further. So where does that leave things? As of right now, there's no official statement from the NBA, no confirmed discipline, and no clear indication whether the league is even going to look into this formally. Adebayo hasn't spoken publicly about it. Herro's shut it down entirely. And 2 organizations that spent years building goodwill around this exact partnership are both staying silent while the internet runs wild with theories, jokes, and reactions. The rest of the league reacted almost instantly. Players were literally walking out of a National Basketball Players Association meeting in Las Vegas that same afternoon when the news broke on their phones. One anonymous player, reading ESPN's report in real time, summed up the entire situation in 6 words. "That doesn't seem like a fair fight." That quote alone spread across the internet faster than almost anything else from the story because it captured exactly what a lot of people were thinking. Adebayo is a 3-time All-Star, a two-way force built like a tank. Herro is a skilled scorer, not a guy built for a physical confrontation with a player of Adebayo's size and strength. Other reactions were more skeptical. This was as serious as it sounded. Former Lakers champion Danny Green weighed in on his own podcast, saying he was surprised by the report, especially since Herro looked completely fine and in good spirits sitting courtside with his new Bucks teammates at that same Summer League game. Green speculated it might have been a small scuffle blown out of proportion online, while also saying it made total sense that Adebayo would confront somebody directly rather than let something fester. In Green's words, that's just who Adebayo is, a guy who'd rather say something to your face than let it sit. What's also worth knowing is that Herro's public messaging right after the trade looked nothing like a guy nursing a grudge. He'd put out a thoughtful farewell statement thanking the organization and specific people within it. During that same Summer League broadcast, hours before news of the fight broke, Herro gave a much longer answer than just, "It's all love," naming Heat staff and coaches individually, calling it a fresh start for both sides. That's not a guy who sounded like he was hiding tension. And yet, according to multiple reports, resentment had reportedly been building for a while, not just from Herro, but from other players inside that Heat locker room too. Some reportedly frustrated that Adebayo landed his massive extension, while Herro spent years sitting in trade rumors instead. Now here's the part worth sitting with. Because this isn't really a story about a punch. It's a story about how fast a trade can unravel something that took years to build. Or whether what we see from athletes in public is ever really the full picture. Herro was saying all the right things on a live broadcast just hours before this happened. Was that genuine? Or is that just what professional athletes are trained to say the moment a camera turns on? Because whatever was actually simmering underneath clearly wasn't all love at all. There's an extra layer of irony here too. Herro didn't just get traded to any team, he got traded home. He grew up just outside Milwaukee in Greenfield, Wisconsin, and attended Whitnall High School before ever becoming a Heat draft pick. For most players, getting traded to your actual hometown team gets framed as a feel-good story. Instead, his return to Wisconsin is now permanently tied to a black eye and a viral 6-word reaction from an anonymous player around the league. There's also something bigger worth asking here about how trades reshape people, not just rosters. Herro spent 7 years being told he was part of Miami's culture, part of that Heat family identity the organization is famous for building. He's a Kentucky guy, drafted the same year Adebayo was already becoming a franchise cornerstone. And in the span of a month, he went from franchise piece to trade chip in the biggest deal of the offseason to the guy getting punched in front of a group of kids by the same organization's other franchise cornerstone. That's not just a business transaction. That's an identity getting stripped away in real time. And it's not hard to see how resentment like that boils over into something ugly, especially when money and pride both get dragged into it publicly. It's also worth looking at how this trade was actually graded by people who cover the league, because that context adds another layer. Multiple outlets gave Miami strong marks, some grading the Heat's return a B+ for landing a 2-time MVP without giving up Adebayo. Milwaukee's grade was far more mixed, with some analysts arguing the Bucks paid the price for waiting too long, watching Antetokounmpo's value shift toward draft capital and cost-controlled players instead of another established star. If you're Herro, walking into a situation where outside analysts already frame your new team as the side that lost the trade, that's one more thing sitting on your shoulders. It's not hard to see how frustration born out of one franchise decision could spill onto the one guy from your old team still standing in front of you. And you have to wonder what this means going forward. The Heat and Bucks are now permanently linked by this trade, two rosters that will be measured against each other for years based on how Giannis performs in Miami versus how Herro performs as Milwaukee's new lead scorer. These two teams are going to play each other multiple times a season, every season, for the foreseeable future. Adebayo and Herro are going to be standing on the same court, guarding each other, competing directly, with this incident sitting in the background of every single one of those matchups. A black eye fades in a couple of weeks. Whatever caused it might not fade nearly that fast. It's also worth remembering the timing. This wasn't some random dust-up buried in a slow news cycle. It happened the same day the Heat and Bucks played each other in Summer League for the first time since the trade, with Herro courtside and Adebayo not even at the game. Miami won comfortably, 119-86, which under normal circumstances would have been the headline. Instead, nobody's talking about the score. So let me know what you actually think, because this story splits people right down the middle. Does Herro deserve real blame here for publicly going after a former teammate's game and his contract, especially when the numbers show he wasn't exactly making dramatically less money himself? Or was Adebayo completely out of line for escalating a social media beef into an actual physical altercation in front of a group of kids, no less? Was that anonymous player right that this wasn't exactly a fair fight to begin with? Or is Danny Green right that the whole thing is getting blown way out of proportion online? Is this just what happens when 7 years of built-up history gets broken apart overnight by a front office decision neither guy fully controlled? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me who you think was more in the wrong, and let's see whether Heat fans and Bucks fans can actually agree on anything here.